listening to the Strangeology podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foran, and this is your place to explore the world of weird, from cryptids and creatures to UFOs, aliens, the paranormal, forbidden knowledge, conspiracies, and more. All right, welcome back to the show, and welcome to any new listeners out there. I got to give a big thanks to everyone out there who listened to my last episode, which was all about the mud flood and the Tartaria theory. And if you haven't listened to it yet, definitely check it out. It's a doozy, and it shattered first day release download records for the show, which is wild. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And as always, I'm trying to bring you guys the best, most interesting stuff to learn about in the Fortean world. And it was a topic I wanted to cover for quite a while. It's a weird one. But yeah, definitely thank you so much. And if you haven't listened to it, go check it out if you haven't. All right. So also today's episode is out earlier than expected. Usually, I'm on the bi-weekly schedule as best as I can. But since the last episode was a week late, I wanted to make up for it and get this one out early for everybody. I'm hoping at some point, to get on the weekly kind of schedule, but we'll see how that goes with everything else that's always going on with Strangeology and life stuff. So I like to make sure that I'm thorough with my research episodes, and also for my interview-based episodes like today, that I've got an interesting guest to chat with, and that I've made sure that I've checked out some of their stuff and I have an idea of what they're all about before they come on the show. So that way we're not going in blind, So I don't have too many updates other than I'll be at the Sasquatch Festival in Whitehall, New York this weekend, Saturday, September 24th. The event happens at the Waterfront Park, and it's going from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Sasquatch Calling Contest, where people are signing up and they're going to do their best Bigfoot call. Like if you've watched Finding Bigfoot or Expedition Bigfoot and stuff like that, where people just yell out into the darkness to see if they can get a response. It's going to be that kind of thing. So that starts at 5 p.m. and goes to the end of the event, and someone's going to, be crowned king of the Bigfoot calling. King or queen, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun. There's something like 70 vendors or so, along with myself, that are going to be selling merch. We're going to have Carrick from Crash Course Cryptozoology. Emily from The Forest Fleur is going to be there, as well as Mike from Where's My Sage. So it's going to be a great time. And if you're in the area or even within driving distance, definitely it's an event you want to come out and hang out at. So hope to see you there. And for October, which is just around the corner, I've got some spooky and weird interviews coming up. So definitely stay tuned for those. And I'm also planning on working on some research episode material that's, in the paranormal, Halloween-y inspired themes. So stay tuned for that. And all right, so why don't we just get into today's episode? So for this one, I had the privilege of getting to speak with Lyle Blackburn, who I've wanted to have on the show for some time. He's a pretty prolific member of the community. He's a musician like myself. He's done a lot of cool stuff, and we had an awesome conversation about everything he gets into within the world of cryptozoology and the paranormal, and what he's been up to with new projects. So I think you're going to like this one. Why don't we just get right into it? All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm stoked because I have a very special guest for this episode, the one and only Lyle Blackburn. And we're going to talk about cryptids, the paranormal, and all things strange. Lyle is an author, a researcher, journalist, producer, adventurer, and a rock and roller based out of Texas. He's written books like The Beast of Boggy Creek, Sinister Swamps. He's narrated and produced documentaries like The Mothman of Point Pleasant, and he's also been on shows like The Unexplained, Finding Bigfoot, Monsters and Mysteries in America, and he's also the founder and the frontman for the band Ghoultown. So, hey, Lyle, thank you so much for hanging out today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. After all that long list, do we have time for the show?
Right, yeah.
It's just crazy.
I suppose I always over prepare when I have guests on the show because I like to know who I'm talking to, and yeah, you've got a pretty extensive resume of all the stuff that you've done. Was there a moment in your life where you were like, "This is it. This is what I want to do with cryptozoology and the paranormal"?
I don't know that there was ever really a moment where I consciously decided, to pursue that in any serious fashion. It was just something that was kind of, um, it was just in me, I guess. When I was young, as far back as I can remember, I loved monster movies and monsters and Frankenstein and Wolfman, and then I about around third grade I got a book called Strange But True, and it had stories of Yeti, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and now I'm reading what I thought, oh, wow, these things might exist in real life. This was a step up from masks and movies, and it just not only the monster aspect, but just the mystery of something to solve, that just really got me. And so, um, just something I loved as a child and just sort of followed and read and watched documentaries. And then when I wrote The Beast of Boggy Creek, it was just literally because I wanted to explore more about the legend of Boggy Creek Bigfoot case, and never really thought of it as I'm going to write this book and sell this book. It's more like, well, I might as well write a book if I'm going to research it. And that's kind of how it started.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like, a lot of us start in a similar fashion where, it's just this innate desire to explore the unknown. So earlier this year, you started your own podcast, Monster Bizarro. Did I get that right?
Monstro Bizarro.
Monstro
Yeah.
Bizarro. That's right. I get that mixed up sometimes.
Strangeology was already taken, so I had to use that.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of...
Which is funny because, at this late point when starting a podcast, I'd think up these cool names and I'd search, and it was literally already a podcast, or it was one I was already on or had been on. It's like, man, there's a lot. So I went with my Monstro Bizarro, which was a column I had in the horror magazine, Rue Morgue.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's a fun name. And yeah, there's a lot of other ology names in like the Fortean realm of podcasting and videos and stuff. It's kind of like the worst part about when you do a project is naming it. I found, like, anytime you're in a band or doing anything.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. How have you been liking the podcasting aspect so far? Has it been enjoyable for you?
Yeah, I like it pretty well. It's something that people have been asking me about forever, and I just had literally no time. I already, have no time, and then I'm like, how could I do a podcast? And finally, I was like, that's just a format that I could have an impact on, but I didn't want to do something that was kind of the same old thing, where it's me interviewing people and so forth. I'm like, what could I do that's different? And I kind of thought about the fact that I had narrated quite a bit of the Small Town Monsters documentary. So I kind of did the voice thing, using my narrator voice. And I thought, well, maybe I could do something more like an audio production that's sort of like along those lines. It just doesn't have the visual, and you can listen to them wherever you are. And so that's kind of the way I did it. So the fun part about it has been that it is more of a production where I'm adding in dramatizations and audio effects and background music and stuff. So it while it's obviously, as no matter what kind of podcast you're doing, it takes time to do it, but it's fun to make these.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the production quality is definitely top notch for your show. It reminds me of listening to, the old radio broadcast dramas back in the day, and it's just super fun. So for listeners out there, if you haven't checked out Monstro Bizarro, definitely do, and I'll leave a link in the show notes for that. So I wanted to talk about this new book that you released, Texas Bigfoot. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, that just literally got that out the door, actually a little early. And that's a book, that I feel like I should write and probably should have already written it, but that's the way things develop. Being from Texas and being that there is a long history of Bigfoot sightings in Texas, and really a surprising history, a surprising amount, because a lot of people who maybe know Bigfoot casually don't realize that there's sightings outside of the Pacific Northwest, much less a place like Texas where people really kind of have an image of that stereotypical cowboy image of ranches and wide open spaces, and certainly we have that, but in the eastern portion of the state, it is heavily forested, and it's called the Piney Woods. And then, down to the Gulf Coast area where there's swampy areas, there's huge river systems, and that kind of bleeds over into Arkansas and Louisiana, where all that collective area has just tons of Bigfoot sightings and very credible Bigfoot sightings. And so, basically, over the years, it's been something that I've collected reports, I've collected old newspaper articles, I've talked to a lot of my buddies who have been researching in this, some cases longer than me, and just sort of filing away the chronology and the history of everything that's Texas Bigfoot. And finally just sort of like, okay, I've got a window here. I've got all the components. So I just sat down and got that thing written.
That's great. That's great. Were there any standout encounter stories for you that just kind of made things a little bit more like, yeah, there's something out there?
Yeah, there was quite a few, that, were up and above just the run of the mill. I saw it run across the road type thing. And some first person witnesses that I had the privilege of interviewing, in some cases kind of getting to know over the years, even to where they had described an encounter that was more lengthy. That in one case, a young man was on the Sabine River, which is what that separates Louisiana and Texas on the eastern border. And he just kind of came up on this thing that was just standing there, and it's just looking at him, and he's looking at it, and he's trying to get his mind around, is this a human, a feral human, or what, some sort of an escaped uh, ape. And the fact that he's in Texas, and this is kind of in a time back in the 80s when you don't think about as much about Bigfoot, and the description of these, where people see them clearly, and from more than 30 seconds or something, where they can describe it. And there's been several of those, especially in the eastern portion, where these descriptions are just mind-boggling. And I've included all that in the book, of course, as sort of the standout examples. But there was also, what really surprised me most about doing this research was actual numbers of sightings that were in the central and western portions of Texas. Because if you go from east to west, it sort of transitions from what we would think of Bigfoot country with the big pine trees and the thick woods, swampy areas, to sort of the blackland prairie, just mesquite trees and more open areas. And then over, by the time you get to El Paso in the west, it's like a desert.
Right.
But there were
Yeah.
cases like the Holly Him and um, the Horizon City Monster and these others that were kind of given names because they were in the newspaper, but essentially Bigfoot creatures over in that central and western area. And this wasn't something where it's like one person saw something run across the road. This was multiple people, numerous people, over a period of 2 or 3 weeks or something, seeing these things. And of course, that generated the media coverage. But I found those to be pretty credible. I mean, these people saw something and it was in a place that is kind of unexpected, as far as what we kind of generally think of as Bigfoot territory. So those were super interesting.
Yeah, yeah, you really don't think about like a desert type of Bigfoot. And the further west you go, there's like the Mogollon Rim in Arizona, which has legends of a hairy ape man, but then that's also like ponderosa pine forest. So there's, it's a little bit more squatchy out there, I guess. But yeah, West Texas, that's definitely pretty interesting that there's a number of sightings out there. Wow. Now you mentioned before about Beast of Boggy Creek or the Falk Monster. Was that kind of like one of your first introductions to the Bigfoot phenomena?
Yeah, that was definitely, after I'd gotten that book on, just your basic Bigfoot and Yeti, um, somewhere after that, my parents, we were in Arkansas actually, which is Falk is only about 3 hours from where I am in Texas, so it wasn't far away. But we were in Arkansas, and some odd circumstances, we went to a drive-in movie up there, and it happened to be showing The Legend of Boggy Creek, which was released in 1972 and showed all throughout the 70s, sort of in drive-ins and theaters and later on TV. But when I saw that, I was like, not only was the movie cool because to me, it was like a horror movie meets actual real Bigfoot case where there's
Yeah.
witnesses and stuff, and but it was so close to where I lived that's when I realized, okay, this might not be something that's just far away from Texas. This is closer, and in the movie, just because it was centered more around what I was familiar with, and it was a small town, just like I'd passed through many times. My dad was a hunter, so we went as far back as, I mean, I was 3 years old going bow hunting with him, and we'd pass through these creepy small towns, en route to the hunting lease, and Falk was just kind of like that. So I was very familiar with that. So it was something that just had all the ingredients to capture my imagination and to at that time. And then later, when I decided I wanted to write a book, it was like, what is my favorite subject? And it was literally that. And I'm like, what? I want to know the facts behind what you see in the movie, and how was that movie made, and what effect did it have on people. So that's kind of really was the catalyst.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a seminal movie for sure. I actually didn't see it until for the first time in my life until like last year. I decided I finally needed to sit down and watch it. Like I grew up watching all the old shows like Monster Quest and Finding Bigfoot and even stuff back in the 90s on like just Discovery Channel and stuff. But yeah, it's
Right.
definitely something that sticks with you, right? Do you have like a favorite Bigfoot story beyond the Falk Monster, or is that kind of it for you?
Well, in terms of just sort of classic Bigfoot stories, I love the Case of the Missouri Monster, which I wrote a book called Momo, Strange Case of the Missouri Monster. That was another that was a little bit later where I got a book. It was called Monsters of North America, and it covered the Legend of Boggy Creek, but it also talked about Momo, and it was this kind of a similar case in the early 1970s where this was not just a Bigfoot, but sort of a hairy, scary thing that, its hair over its face and its head was said to be bigger, and it scared these kids, and then it set off this crazy amount of sightings, and the police there organized posses and hunted up for it on this area called Marzoff Hill that overlooked the little town in Missouri. That was one that I just, again, was like, if a movie had been made about that, it would be just as famous as Boggy Creek, I think. And
Yeah.
the Honey Island Swamp Monster, while that is not necessarily a Bigfoot per se, but that was another that I always loved. And you probably see a theme. There's these kind of swampy, scary Bigfoot stories, and those were always the ones that I loved the most, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty fun for sure. Yeah, Momo's a great story. Although that poor dog, right?
Right, the bloody dog. It's like,
uh,
man,
yeah, yeah.
PETA
um,
would have a problem with Momo.
I think so, probably. Recently I learned about uh Area X up in Oklahoma, which isn't it's in like the southeast corner, which isn't, it's right next to Texas. What's your take on that? Do you know about Area X and the North American Wood Ape Conservancy?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I've been to Area X twice, and I was a member of that group for a period of time before it was the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, back when it was the
Oh,
Texas
okay.
Bigfoot Research Conservancy.
Gotcha.
And that was kind of early on when they were starting to focus in on Area X as a place where it's worth the investment of time and research, because prior to that, they were investigating just randomly everything. And I was kind of focusing on Falk a lot, but I think Area X, which may surprise some people, that Oklahoma even has Bigfoot sightings,
Yeah.
but it's the Ouachita Mountains. It's over on the eastern portion, and the Ouachita's bridge over into Arkansas. And if you if you go to the Ouachita Mountains and just take a little bit of a drive up there, immediately you realize it looks very squatchy, if you will. And Area X in particular, at least back 10 years ago, to get into there, it was like once you left the blacktop, it was about an hour and a half of a drive through these treacherous dirt roads way back up in the mountains. And it was hard to get to, and it was so isolated. And when you got back in there, you're like, man, there could be a family of creatures living up here, and it would be extremely hard to capture evidence of them. Now, when I was there, I didn't experience any sightings or anything abnormal, really. But of course, over the years, all my colleagues there have compiled just so many examples of stuff, and I think that the guys in that group are some of at least the most diligent and intelligent and trustworthy guys. So the information they've released on this, in my opinion, is very solid. And I can attest that I've been up there. I know that it's a good area, and this has a history of sightings, not just from what those guys say, but from people who've lived in the area, you know, outside of Area X. So it's a great area.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome to hear. I did not know that you were, part of a preliminary group of that. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it just makes me, wonder when people are so skeptical about the existence of a large primate in North America. There's all these different areas outside of the Pacific Northwest, of course. Um, but even like in Canada, there's so much wilderness up there, and even places such as East Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, in the Ozarks, and then there's even kind of like a corridor going up into like the Northeast United States and into Canada that's kind of got a lot of activity going on too. So it's like there's all these places that are so hard to get to that people just never go to. Like anything could be hiding out there. So it's yeah, it's definitely very interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I think that, that's one thing. If people don't have a perspective, I think a lot of people who just maybe live in the city and don't, maybe their vacations are not to wilderness areas or so forth, or they don't live in rural areas, don't really realize that there are still places where animals can flourish and creatures could hide. I mean, we're closing in, but it's not like this prevailing attitude of, well, we've explored everything, we've developed everything, and all that sort of thing. There are these tracts of land, and if you were to get dropped in the middle of the Ouachita Mountains, or in the big thicket of Texas or other places, you quickly say, okay, there's miles and miles of forestry here. I'm lost without a GPS. I couldn't even find my way out. I could walk for days and not know where the hell I'm going. And creatures, animals are amazing. They can survive in these areas, unbeknownst to us. And if you happen to get lucky and see one, so be it. But I think it's a perspective thing that people may not have. That it doesn't have to be, um, the 1500s where it's an undeveloped country, that things can still live here and relatively closely, but still be obscured from our everyday life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of places to hide, even close to civilization. Have you ever experienced or encountered any Bigfoot activity personally?
There's been a few things that have happened over the years in a few different places. I've never really had a sighting that was so clear and definitive that I'll say, I definitely saw a Bigfoot. But up in the Falk area, um, I did see something move between the trees that was red in color, which is kind of odd. I didn't see the full. It was obscured about 75 yards away in the trees, and something had caught my eye, and I was looking over there, and this was like around 3 p.m. in the day, and then something walked or moved or something between those trees in an area where it is basically inaccessible by foot unless you boat across the small channel of the bayou. It's not private land. There's no roads. There's no nothing back there. In fact, I've been up there for more than a decade and have never seen a person over there ever.
Really?
And on this occasion, um, I was just looking over there, and I was actually just kind of looking around that day and on my way to interview a woman who had experienced some howls. And when I saw whatever this thing was, and while again, I can't say that that was the Fount monster or a Bigfoot or anything, the fact that it was red, um, doesn't throw it off, because there's been descriptions of that creature that the color varies from dark black to brown to reddish brown to even red. And the strange thing is about 30 minutes before that, I had been at the Monster Mart, which is a place there in Falk, like a convenience store where people meet up.
Yeah.
And one of the locals had said that he had seen what he believed was the creature, about a week prior, and it had run across the road, on a road I'm familiar with. And he said to him, it looked very similar to an orangutan. It was very orange,
Interesting.
reddish in color. So, and then about 30 minutes later, I literally see this red thing moving through the trees that I could not identify. So that was a possible sighting. And then there's been other things. I was once in the Ocala National Forest in Florida, in which myself and my research partner Cindy Lee were doing a night hike in the middle of January. There was no one out there, and we heard what sounded like somebody hitting on a tin can, bink, 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 like hitting on it. I was like, what, what the hell is that?
What?
And so I kind of plunge off into the brush, and something big, very big, gets up and sort of runs ahead. And I'm trying to get my flashlight on it. And of course, once that started, the pinging noise stopped. And so then I kind of would advance with the flashlight, and then whatever this thing was would get up and run. And the more it did that, the more I could tell it wasn't, it wasn't a deer. It and I've heard hogs, I've been around all kinds of wildlife. It didn't sound like something running on four legs or running through the brush. It was bigger, and I don't know, kind of sounded like a person or something on 2 feet. I mean, there's bears down there, but it was elusive. So I kept going, a little, I'd move 15 yards further and the thing would run ahead of me, and I never could catch it. And finally, I'm like, well, I'm going to get lost down in here, because I just jumped in here and started running. Cindy was waiting back up sort of at the clearing. I eventually turned around, but I can't say that was a skunk ape, but something was evading me, and something that was presumably hitting on a can, which later I found the can. I looked around, back up closer. I don't know, it was just one of those weird things that something's in the woods, and I don't know what else would hit on a can. I can't even imagine a bear would do that, but it was a weird thing.
Wow. Those are some pretty interesting encounters. I would think that, like, if you're listening to this thing that's somewhere out there in the darkness, you'd eventually be able to determine whether or not it was walking bipedally or on four legs like a deer. I remember being out in the woods growing up, and a buck kind of just like ran near my friend and I when we were out on a hike, and you could definitely tell that it wasn't a person walking. And then it kind of presented itself and ran right by us, which was terrifying. But anyway, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're familiar with some of that and you've heard examples, you can kind of at least start to rule out what it's not. And of course, deer is something very familiar and stuff like that. So again, it's sort of a process of elimination where you can't necessarily claim, I don't want to claim, oh, I was chasing a skunk ape, but I'm like, I don't know. It sure sounded like it could have been to me.
Yeah. Something different about that versus the other animals in the forest, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've even seen bears in the wild. And I've been up in the mountains of New Mexico quite a bit, and literally have come up on bears, and they're so quiet. Bears just are extremely quiet. You just look over and that's there. It doesn't tromp and bust out of the forest and run, breaking limbs and stuff. They're a lot more quiet than you think. And so I'm even familiar with the way bears move.
Yeah. That is very, very interesting. Well, perhaps it was a skunk ape. Who knows?
I like to think so.
Yeah, right. So Lyle, what's your favorite part about doing cryptid and Fortean research?
Well, I like the process of kind of building a case and putting together all the pieces, that sort of corroborate the sightings. It's to me, it's like when you, like in the Beast of Boggy Creek or Momo or any other case where it's like, okay, you hear, oh yeah, a couple of people saw this thing, and, yeah, or whatever. Well, when you start really looking into it, you find other newspaper articles that have examples, or you end up finding first person witnesses, or even the sons or daughters of someone who had seen it back in the day and all this stuff, and you start building up that this wasn't just a couple of sightings. There was something going on, and it could have lasted, like in the Beast of Boggy Creek, it's gone on for years and years, and not all of it is publicized. I mean, it is now because I've written books, but when you're kind of researching these cases, and you never know where it's going to go, and it's sort of like a little web, and then all of a sudden, you find you're led to another witness that has something really cool to offer that almost supports what other people are saying, yet this person didn't even know these people. And so when it all starts to come together to build this story of of a classic story, or even one where it's just sort of an isolated thing out in somewhere, but when you start building those pieces together and interviewing people, it's exciting to see the full picture of the story.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Definitely insightful. Now, what would your advice be for someone who wants to start down this path as a cryptid researcher?
Well, um, I get emails and stuff from people saying, I want to become a cryptozoologist, or whatever. How, is this a good career? How do I do it? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know, how do I say this? It's not a career. There's, per se. I mean, nobody gets a degree in cryptozoology or something because it's not an accredited science, and then where do you get a job? I mean, it's not like that. So my advice is, if you're interested in this and you want to do something or contribute or whatever, is just do what interests you. That's what I do. I just do this stuff, and yes, I put out a book and stuff, but I just, those are something I want to know myself. You got to go with that. You don't look at it as sort of, well, what do I do to create a career out of this? Um, I mean, I never even called myself a cryptozoologist. It's just what people, you got to call it something, where we research cryptids. And, if you're not a podcaster or an author or something and you just research, well, you know, there has to be some title to
Right.
quantify it. Um, but to me, I'm just primarily an investigative journalist, sort of an Indiana Jones guy that can go in the woods and do all this stuff, and also interview people, and then also sit down and put together a compelling book. And those books kind of perpetuate what I do. People, if I can sell those books, I don't, obviously not living in mansions or anything. I just kind of turn that back into the process of continuing to try to contribute the books for the history and just doing it for fun. So I think anybody who's interested, just follow your own passions, do what's interest you, and don't look at it as something you're going to make a lot of money at. If you can write books and make documentaries and things like that, hopefully that will perpetuate you to be able to continue the research. That's about the best you can ask for.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure. um, let's talk about the documentaries and like television shows you've been involved with. You did a pilot once with Ken Gerhardt, and you've done narration for Small Town Monsters. Um, how has that all been?
That's been a good offshoot of this. I mean, I think really I like writing the books the most. That's kind of where, but you need to supplement that with these other mediums. And with Small Town Monsters, with Seth Breedlove and the group that's making those films, I was lucky to be get on board on their third film, which they did the Boggy Creek Monster. And Seth came to me saying, well, we obviously, for famous small town monsters, we got to do the Boggy Creek monster case. And so when I got involved in that and lended my research and everything I could, and um, he thought, well, maybe you should narrate it just because you've got that first person perspective. And so when I did, it's the response was great. People love the narration, they love that style. So that was fortuitous because I was able to continue working with them on. I think I've narrated about 7 or 8 of those movies since then. And I always thought that was great because in that case, Seth had the vision for it. He had the visuals and the understanding of cinematography, and the rest of the guys that input with that. All I had to do was my part. I didn't have to muscle it all myself. And it was great to be a part of that and to see where that company has grown and what quality products have come out of it. And I'm happy to contribute, whatever it is needed. The the television shows, are tricky. I mean, because you get asked a lot to do certain stuff, or you get these production companies, man, you're the man, we want you should be on this series, and they, butter you up and I'll say all this crap. And you have to watch out because the TV shows are not like small town monsters. You don't know the credibility and the integrity of what they're trying to make. So you have to be careful because I don't want to be associated with something that's creating a bunch of BS or hoaxing or whatever it is, or
Right.
run through the woods and act like you're scared. Um, so most of those I just very skeptical of, and I'll try to do ones that I think are contributing to information or as best I can. The the thing I did with Ken Gerhard, the American Monster Tour thing, was sort of our own stab at like, what if we just did something ourselves instead of creating this wild BS TV show? What if you just sort of followed us with a camera as we do investigations on a particular creature or area or whatever? And so we made a couple of those, but it's hard to do a TV show unless you have some kind of funding and a team of people. And,
Yeah.
unless you're Seth Breedlove, that's your only thing. Ken and I are doing all this other stuff as well. So it was just hard to continue doing that because the original guy who was doing the camera and editing, he didn't have time. He works for actual TV shows and stuff. So we made a couple of really cool episodes and we all shopped those to production companies to see if somebody was interested in picking up the ball and taking off with the series. But, we never, that hasn't happened yet. There's always talks and stuff going on, but it was fun to do something where we again had the control and making something that we thought had integrity and interest to cryptid fans, as opposed to just being in the hands of television networks where you have no control.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear that. That's, yeah. Creative control is definitely an important aspect if you're trying to have, something that stands up to scrutiny and really contributes value to this whole cryptozoology thing. um, you've also been on Coast to Coast a number of times, right? How has that been? That's just kind of like, I've grew up listening to Coast to Coast, so it's maybe someday I'll be on it. I don't know.
Right. Well, honestly, it's great to be on the show because it's big and it's well known, and of course, in a certain sense, I listened to that and was influenced by it when I was younger, and it was like, wow, if I could be on that show, I never even thought of that. I just, all of a sudden, I got an invite to do it, and I'm thinking, wow, this is like a full circle dream come true or something. But dude, when it comes down to it, it's a show that it's highly produced. It's got 50 million commercials and all that. And once once podcasts kind of started going, it was like, I love doing these because there is nobody interrupting our conversation here. And you're
Right.
asking, and you're familiar with all of the subjects and what we're talking about and cases and everything else. And I didn't have to feed you questions. These to me are more informational and better quality than maybe what you can get in between 5 minutes of something between advertisements. But
Right.
coast to coast is the thing and what it is. So you have to balance that with yes, to produce something like that, they have to have sponsorship and all that stuff. So, but I remember early on, the funny thing was they I've always had a cell. I haven't had a landline since like the 90s, and they were like, well, we only do interviews from landlines. I'm like, I don't have a landline. I hadn't had a landline in 10 years. So I had to go to my grandmother's house, who
Oh,
has this
jeez.
ancient landline that sounded terrible. My cell phone reception was far superior, but I'd go over there, and of course, coast to coast is the middle of the night. So I'd go to my grandmother's house, and I'm over at 2 a.m. at my grandma's
Oh.
doing this interview in her hall out, on this phone I could barely hear on. I'm like, this is the worst, but it was the only landline I knew. You can't go to your neighbors next door and go, hey, y'all got a landline? Can I borrow that at 2 a.m. in the morning? So that was always funny as I was over at my grandma's doing these interviews years ago on Coast to Coast.
That's funny. Wow. I didn't realize that was how they had to do things. That's definitely makes for a funny story for sure. Um, Now you also you've done a lot of speaking at conferences. Do you have any conferences coming up for this last quarter of the year?
Yes, yeah, seems to be more and more of these great conferences and get-togethers about cryptids. This weekend coming up, I don't know how timely this will air, but this weekend is the Mothman Festival, which I'll be
Right.
speaking at. And then on September 24th, I'll be going back up to that area to Virginia to a new conference in Roanoke, Virginia called Bigfoot and Friends, a cryptid conference where I'll be speaking. And then after that, the annual Texas Bigfoot Conference, October 14th through 16th in Jefferson, Texas, right in the heart of the Piney Woods. That's a really fun one. And of course, this year I'll have the Texas Bigfoot book to debut in person. Really, it'll be the first time I have it available in person. Will be at the Texas Bigfoot Conference. So I'm looking forward to that. That's always a good one. But yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of these conferences, and I enjoy doing them because you can get with like-minded people. You can have fun with it. Um, sure, research is there's field research and all this other stuff, but like any great pursuit, getting together with other people and sharing ideas, and even at many of these conferences, I've met people where I've gotten some credible witness accounts that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise,
Yeah, yeah.
because, and then you're there in person, you're not talking to this person over the phone or whatever. You can judge the credibility of it better. And so I think over the years, a lot of these conferences have been very beneficial in gathering up some information that maybe these people wouldn't have normally shared, and they feel they can trust you or know you or they're fans of your books, and they will come up and share a story. So conferences to me have always been one of the one of the key aspects of this pursuit.
Yeah, yeah, conferences are great. I remember going to CryptidCon last year in Kentucky, and I had a table. I was vending, selling some shirts and stuff, and people would come up to me and tell me their stories. It was very a very cool experience. Now you do all sorts of different kinds of conferences too beyond cryptozoology. right? You do some paranormal stuff, some horror, and comic and Comic Con type uh, conferences. Do you have like a preference of which ones you like to do more?
Um, well, yeah. I mean, I get invited to, obviously, when they're a Bigfoot conference or cryptids, usually um, those are kind of a no-brainer. Sometimes there's been paranormal conferences where they'll bring in different aspects of the paranormal, cryptids and UFOs and ghosts. Those are fun because you can kind of hear some other topics. I really like horror conventions because I've been doing these longer than any of it because of my band Ghoultown. We kind of had a horror theme to it, and we would often be invited to horror conferences that had music or bands, or I just like to go to those because I'm a big fan of horror movies and other stuff. So it'd be cool. It was just cool to be a part of it. Um, and there's been some Comic Cons like Pensacon in Pensacola, Florida, where you're just hanging out with people like from Star Trek and
Nice.
movies and other stuff that you wouldn't normally run across, and it's just always fun because you just never know what's going to happen or who you're going to run into or what experience or conversation you're going to have. And in some cases they will ask me, oh yeah, you're the Bigfoot guy or something like that, or it's cool because um it keeps the life interesting. So I like to do really just all of it. It's fun to get out and meet people.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I understand you're a big horror fan. What would you say are like your top three horror movies of all time?
Yeah, that's always a tough one. There's so many good ones, and
Right.
like I said, really since I can remember, maybe 3 or 4 years old, I loved horror movies. So there's been a lot, but my favorite, I've of course got to say, The Legend of Boggy Creek is my favorite all-time horror movie, if you will. I mean, that's literally had to change my entire life.
Yeah.
So that, of course, but I am the other in my top would be John Carpenter's Halloween, the original Halloween.
Yep.
Really come to love the simplicity and iconic nature of that film over the years, and from the soundtrack to just the establishing of the shape of the stalker, that I guess somewhat of a slasher, but it's not a gory film. It's atmospheric, and that's one of my favorites. I love The Shining, purely because Jack Nicholson is such a great actor and really elevates that to this sort of psychological horror set in that, just the way Kubrick filmed that. So The Shining is another one that I really love. And
Nice.
then I just love the classics, all the Universal monster movies, the Hammer horror movies, and I would say probably The Creature from the Black Lagoon would be far up there, just simply because I love the sort of swampy reptilian
Yeah.
lagoon kind of monsters, and that's the granddaddy of all of them.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, those are all some pretty awesome choices for top movies. Definitely can't go wrong. Um, I want to talk about Ghoultown for a second, since you mentioned it. I'm a fellow rocker myself. I've got a band more in like the punk genre. But how did Ghoultown come about?
Well, it's kind of a conglomeration of everything I've been into over the years. Most of the bands I've been in have always kind of had a horror punk theme, and in some way or another. And I mean, I started as way back a long time ago when I was really young, like in junior high times, playing in actual punk bands and performing in the hardcore punk scene in the early 80s. And that exposed me to the Misfits, um, in which I just, obviously they sing about horror stuff. That's the first time I realized, dude, oh yeah, you don't have to sing about, fast cars and women and love songs. I guess it never occurred to me, it's just like that's what you heard. It's like, oh, you can sing about horror movies. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there you go.
I had a horror punk band back in like 1983, um, when I was a kid, and then I eventually played in other bands, a band called Solitude Eternus, which was on Roadrunner Records, and that was a doom metal band,
Nice.
which did pretty well. We were able to, being on Roadrunner, we toured, Europe and Canada and all over the place, U.S. And so, starting in my 20s, I was doing, I guess, I would say professional music, but they didn't pay us a lot of money. They would put us on tour, but somehow we never got a lot of money.
I think that's
Even
still
though
the
those
case
records,
today.
yeah, man, they've
Yeah.
reissued our classic albums, and I'm like, here's $300. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Oh man.
I wrote those songs, but Ghoultown was sort of eventually came to this idea of doing this sort of more, it encompassed everything, the horror, sort of the spaghetti western thing that I loved with my Texas roots. It was sort of a dark western, had punk, we're a little bit metal, we're a little bit like spaghetti western soundtrack.
Yeah.
Anything is thrown in there, it's Ghoul Town. And it, to me, it was something that finally I did that had the uniqueness that the Misfits had in their own way. It's like Ghoul Town had the black hat and all that. So this band I formed in 1998 and has pretty much been um, going off and on ever since. We do not tour like we used to. I mean, we used to tour a lot, play wherever, but I don't do that as much because I've been doing that so long. So that's intermixed with my monster hunting. But Ghoul Town does well, and that's music is pretty much how I've made a living um, all these years. So we still have it going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's once you have so much stuff going on in your life, it's hard to tour. It's been probably about 4 years or so since my band has had a chance to go out for more than just like a one-off show. But what would you
Right, you know
say?
what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say is the best show that Ghoultown has ever played?
Oh, phew. There's been a lot of really cool ones. I'd say the coolest one for me personally was once this was back quite a few years ago, and we were playing in a big venue in Houston called Fitzgerald's, which had the shows they did were cool because they had two stages. It was a multi-floored level, so they would have a main act on the stage upstairs, which was a bigger stage that sometimes we played as opening, but there was also this stage on the bottom level that a band would play off in between, so people would kind of go back and forth or whatever. So I was playing that stage, and we were playing. And that night, the Misfits, which were reformed in the '90s, and the
Yeah,
Misfits were my favorite band. But I was in the Fiend Club in the '80s, but now they're
nice.
reformed. So they were playing upstairs, um, and we were playing downstairs, and all of a sudden, people start pointing. I mean, I'm singing, and we're playing a cover of Ghost Riders in the Sky, Ghoul Town style. People are pointing, and I look over to my left on the stage, and there's Jerry Only from the Misfits on the stage, had commandeered one of the backup guys' mics and was singing along. And I'm just like, what in the hell is this? And
That's awesome.
it was just one of those moments where I was like, I think I said, Jerry Only or something, like I just kind of went with it. But
Yeah.
afterwards, he was like, man, somebody came upstairs and told me about your band, and said you got to come down here and see this band Ghoul Town. And so he that's why Jerry is just came down there. um, this was before they had played, came down there and just jumped on the stage right up, and so we became friends from there. And
Oh man,
um,
that's really cool.
and later played other opening gigs with the Misfits, and then later with Doyle, his own band.
Yeah.
um, So I love those guys. They're really cool guys, and so that's one standout show. I mean, among other good ones.
Yeah, yeah. You can't can't get much better than that, having Jerry Only come out and
Right,
sing along with you.
right,
Holy moly.
right. And that's how you meet him. It's not like, hello, Mr. Only, or you meet him somewhere else, or even if he's heard of your band, he's literally on your stage. So
I,
cool.
that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I always loved watching when I was a teenager, like watching old Misfits videos from the early 80s, and like Jerry and Doyle are just like towering and commanding the stage while, Glenn is, tearing it up on the mic.
Yeah,
That's
man.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just to me the perfect band. But of course those old videos, God, the audio's rough. And I mean, most of them are, it sucks because there's not any more quality stuff, but part of it is the punkness of it. It was like a band of vampires in the punk scene. I don't even know how to, it's just, it was so unique and cool.
Yeah, there really wasn't anything else like it back then, for sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
which is why which is why now they can sell out Madison Square Garden. Who the hell would think? I remember they played when they last toured in Dallas, through Dallas in 1983. I couldn't go because I couldn't drive, and my parents would not let me out of the house. It was a weeknight, and I knew friends that went, but it was only like maybe 20 people showed up at that show
Yeah.
back then. And I'm like, I should have somehow snuck out, because after that they broke up. And then, you know now, if you want to see them, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars at a giant arena. It's like,
Right, yeah,
I,
that
re- I regret not having at least tried harder
wow.
to take my punishment and sneak out of the house or something.
Right, right, yeah. Well, if only we could, do things differently sometimes.
Right. I did see Sam Hain in 1984, and spent about 30 minutes talking to Danzig, who probably thought I was some goofy little kid. So I did, just after that, I did see Sam Hain in a small club, but that was the closest I got to old Misfits.
There you go. That's awesome.
Mhm.
um, you did a music video and a song for Cassandra Peterson, also known as Elvira. Um, how did that connection happen?
Yeah, that was another pretty awesome thing. We were actually playing at a horror convention at Texas Frightmare Weekend, and Ghoultown was doing a kind of an acoustic set at the VIP party. Um, it wasn't like a full-on rock show or whatever, because those are in hotels. And we were playing, and Cassandra's manager saw us play. She wasn't actually at that party, but then the next day I was down at we had like a table, where the band was selling music and stuff. And somebody ran over and said, Elvira wants to meet you. I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. No, no, seriously. And I'm like, okay. So the next thing you know, here she comes over there with her manager. And he had, I guess, loved the band and had told her all about it. Um, and so we got to talking, and it was actually, she said, well, you could write a song for me or something. We could work together. And I'm like, well, I can do that. I was a huge Elvira fan, and obviously, and so we ended up, I came back home after that, worked up some demos and sent them some song ideas. And we we this was kind of when she started doing conventions again. She had kind of been off, out of the light for a minute. And so we recorded the song Mistress of the Dark, and then she was using it as like a thing on her website. And then we liked it a lot, so we had a mutual friend that was doing uh, music videos and stuff. So we ended up going out to Hollywood and shooting the Mistress of the Dark video with her out there in Hollywood, which was super cool. She's great, and just, it was fun to work with her. So that's how that all came, just from us playing at a horror convention.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Um, yeah. So we're just about at the top of the hour here. Do you have any? I know you're releasing your Texas Bigfoot book, but do you have any new books or projects in the works that you can talk about?
Let's see, what am I doing next? Yeah, it's it's been kind of busy with getting together that book. I have a few ideas of what's happening next, but there's no real definite thing for the rest of the year. It gets real busy in the fall with convention appearances, so I have a lot of that coming up, and I have been dabbling with writing some Ghoul Town material. We haven't done an album since 2020. We usually do one every 2 or 3 years, so but that's pending on me having the inspiration to write tunes. I don't really put myself on a schedule, but I have been working a little bit with writing some songs, and maybe some Ghoul Town stuff will come up. Hard to say. I'm just sort of at this point just gonna relax and go to events and do some camping this fall and see what happens.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. All
Mhm.
right. Well, I've got one final question here that I usually ask all of my guests, and it's in the wide-reaching Fortean world of creatures and creepies and crawlies. What keeps you up at night the most, if anything?
um, I'm not really, I don't have any fears of anything as far as creatures or monsters. And I will chase them in the woods. I don't care. The,
Right on.
really, anything that keeps me up is usually has to do with people, uh, people themselves, I would say. And as far as the world of monsters, I'm all in, man.
There you go.
There's no fear.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Lyle. Can you tell my listeners where they can find all of your amazing works?
Well, the best place to find out the information would be from my website at lyleblackburn.com. And I have an online store where you can get autographed copies of my books and t-shirts and other things. And you can also find my books on Amazon, of course, available in paperback, hardback, and ebook. And if you would like to see some of the documentaries we've done, you can view those primarily on Amazon Prime. So if you just search Lyle Blackburn on Amazon Prime, those will come up, the Small Town Monsters and other things. And just you never know when I might be on a television show here and there. So just check it out. Thank you.
All right, big thanks again to Lyle for taking the time out of his busy schedule to hang out and chat with me about all of his endeavors. He's certainly done so much and provided a lot of value to the cryptid and paranormal communities for sure. So definitely check out all of his stuff. I'll throw links in the show notes for everyone, for his books, his music, and all that. As always, this show wouldn't be possible without the support of listeners like you. Anytime you download the show and share it with friends and family, post it around the internet, it helps so much and it inspires me to bring you the best content that I can. And we're only just getting started here. There's so much more to come. If you're looking for more ways to support Strangeology, you can head on over to patreon.com/Strangeology. And for less than the cost of a cup of coffee or even a candy bar these days, you can pledge your support and help out the show. I also want to give a warm welcome to our newest member, Dee. Welcome aboard. Some of the benefits of joining are early access to episodes of the podcast, as well as YouTube videos that I periodically publish, as well as access to Strangeology Beyond, the members-only portion of the show, which is sometimes a whole episode in and of itself. There's merch discounts, exclusive merch, even a cryptid t-shirt of the month club tier where you get a brand new Homestate cryptid design on a t-shirt every month. Definitely check it out if you're interested. And again, that's patreon.com/Strangeology. See you there. The other way, of course, to support the show and what I do here is to head on over to my merch store, which you can find at strangeology.etsy.com, where you can find a plethora of cryptid, alien, and otherwise Fortean designs, and I'm frequently adding in new designs there, so you always want to check back in to see what's new. People love the Mothman and Fresno Nightcrawler gear that I've got there. They're definitely fan favorites. But I've got a collection of Homestate cryptid shirts with 60 cryptid designs and more coming in the future for other countries outside of the US. There's a few alien and UFO designs, and always just adding new stuff. Gotta love it. You can get these designs on t-shirts, tank tops, long sleeves, sweaters, hoodies. There's also stickers, magnets, posters, pins, all sorts of goodies. And again, that's strangeology.etsy.com. Your support is always appreciated. And don't forget to check out my website, strangeology.com, and sign up for my newsletter/email list. I don't spam people too much, but occasionally I'll send out discount codes or just provide updates with what's going on with Strangeology. You can also find my blog there, and at some point in the near future, I'm planning to bring on some blog writers to bring some cool articles for everyone to read. I have so much going on that it's hard to keep up with everything else. So stay tuned. And if you're a writer and love cryptids and high strangeness and love to write about that kind of stuff, definitely reach out. You can head over to the contact form on my website, or you can just email me at strangeologist@gmail.com, or reach out to me via Instagram. Experiencers, if you have stories about your encounters with cryptids, creatures, and the unknown, and want to share your story to potentially be featured on a future episode of the Strangeology podcast, you can call the Strangeology hotline at 802-448-0612, and please leave a detailed message. The voicemail has a 3-minute time limit, but if your story goes on longer, just call back and pick up right where you left off until the story is complete. I'd love to hear your stories, so again, that's 802-448-0612. And finally, don't forget to follow me over on all of my social media accounts for more content, giveaways, memes, and more. You can find me mainly on Instagram and TikTok, but I'm also on Facebook and Twitter as well. And all those links, as always, will be in the show notes. Okay, well, that's it from me for now. For Patreon members, stick around after the short break. Lyle had a few more minutes to chat, and we get into the creepy, the crawly, and the creatures that may be out there in the swamplands of America. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Strangeology Beyond, your members-only segment of the Strangeology podcast. So, Lyle, thanks for hanging out for a little bit longer.